Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the third episode of the Pinch Hitter podcast with me, my Chris King, my co-host, also Justin Roshak. Chris returns continued efforts to bring Lisa Ann on the show, or just that, continuing. But we have another big guest in store for tonight. We have Pedro Gomez from ESPN joining us. We look forward to having Pedro on and picking his brain about a lot of things in regards to the baseball season or lack thereof a season at this point. But before we get into Pedro, as we'll have him on in about the next 10 minutes or so, we did have Brandon Olson from Whole Nine Sports on in our first episode, and the draft obviously took place, so we're looking to recap it to some extent. We'll have an episode later on in the week where Brandon comes back on with Chris and Justin to recap the draft. But guys, your thoughts on the draft? I'll start with you, Chris, because you clearly weren't here with your previous pursuit.
It's going to be a tireless pursuit. I hope you fucking know that. But
I know.
I don't know. I like the Giants getting a lot of hate early. San Diego getting a lot of hate. I'm just not sure if it's warranted yet. It's early, and Dave Gettleman's setup was a little bit nicer than people thought. He wasn't working on a fucking 2002 laptop only, so I think that definitely helped the situation out. Packers.
Oh
I'm
man,
not so sure. I don't know. Their two best players were quarterback and running back, and then in the first two rounds this year, they go quarterback, running back. So I
it
don't know.
was
Quarterback, I guess, as a successor and stuff like that, it takes time, but I think you could wait another 2 years or so. I know Aaron Rodgers is kind of like turning into this diva, but I think you could wait. Maybe offensive line, maybe wide receiver or something like that. Maybe that would have helped more, but we'll see. I think Packers losers though, losers of the
I
draft.
agree. I agree.
yeah,
I
big
agree.
time,
And
big time.
what message is that sending to Rodgers? Going and drafting a quarterback in the round. I mean, one game away from the Super Bowl. Somebody mentioned to me a couple of days ago, you're one game away from the Super Bowl. You should be adding players to boost you to get over that hump, to get into the Super Bowl, not trying to build towards the future. And that's where I had my reservations about that pick. What were your thoughts, Justin?
Packers 100% losers. Falcons losers. I don't understand what they were doing. I mean, I guess I understand what the Falcons were doing. They needed a cornerback in the first round, but they went AJ Terrell, who I just think was a big time reach. For the Packers, everyone knows they need a receiver. They have one of the best in the league, Devontae Adams. But beyond that, it's pretty deprived there. And they
Yes,
drafted
and
zero
that
wide
was.
receivers in the
I
entire
agree.
draft. So,
And
and then
I
like
noticed that there was a lot of talk about how there is such a lack of receiver depth with Green Bay after Devontae Adams. I mean, and that's been you look at the Green Bay roster, that wide receiver core that was there when Rodgers first came around. When I'm talking about the Greg Jennings and the Donald Drivers and the Jordy Nelsons of the world, and the talent around him is just not there to that caliber that it was when he initially came on the scene. So he's not getting any younger. There's a little rust on Rodgers. I think you see that age is starting to take its toll. Some people beg to differ. Some people say it's the lack of talent. But I've seen Rodgers. I don't see vintage Rodgers at this point anymore. But he needs. They need to do Rodgers a favor anyway, though, and supply him with the necessary talent around him to come that hump and ultimately make it to the big game again. So I agree with the assessment of those two. What about the Patriots not drafting a quarterback, though? We were all in on Stidham, though.
I mean, like because Belichick even said it. It wasn't by design. They didn't openly avoid the quarterbacks. They just stuck to the board. I don't agree with any. Well, there was two picks that I liked. I liked Kyle Duggar, the safety, and Joshua Uche from Michigan, the pass rusher.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think they can be Duggar can be the big nickel, big money, the money nickel that comes up from to the box and plays by the line of scrimmage. Uche is not developed that much as a pass rusher, but he's really athletic, a lot of potential. The rest of the picks, I didn't really understand it. And even though I'm a big Jeff fan, I believe that Belichick is a genius and a mastermind. But if you look at these recent drafts in the last 5 to 10 years, he hasn't been drafting very well. He's been getting by with Tom Brady and middling receivers. Gronkowski and Julian Edelman were really the only ones that Tom Brady really trusted, and that's a big reason why he left too.
Mm-hmm. Your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, I think probably wasn't a good idea to at least not entertain bringing in somebody else. Who knows? Maybe Jameis Winston. Maybe if he could turn Jameis Winston's career around, which I think he could, just by being a hard ass alone. I think it would have been worth something to bring him in, but I don't even think Brian Hoyer. I think right now Brian Hoyer is still second on the depth chart. But let's talk about winners. Saints winner, Vikings winners of the draft. Saints,
Baltimore.
they get a guy who's gonna fucking he just wants to fucking rip people's fucking teeth out. Cesar Ruiz just gonna go in combo guard center.
That's one of my favorite picks.
Just a mean.
Yeah.
He plays, and then I believe it was top 40 prospect in the third round. I mean,
Zach Vaughn.
Yeah, and then the Vikings, arguably best wide receiver in the draft, taken as the fifth wide receiver, and then Justin Jefferson, and then you get even before that or just after that, I believe it was Jeff Gladney, who could also be the top corner in the draft, and they got these guys in the 20s, so I don't know,
Vikings
man.
The Vikings, Ravens, and Cowboys, all three of them did amazing job, great value. We talk about the Cowboys; they got arguably. I know you said Justin Jefferson, arguably the best receiver in the draft, but my personal opinion was CeeDee Lamb was the best wide receiver. He's physical. He's not fast, but he's very quick, elusive, great with the ball in his hands.
Raiders will continue to Raider, right? Drafting Ruggs over there.
I like the pick for them.
That's such a.
I would have went somewhere
else. That's such a Raiders pick. That's such a Raiders pick. That's such a Darius Hayward Bay pick.
You know what's what's such a Raiders pick? Damon Arnett going at number 19 when people had him. I'm a big Ohio State fan, and I can attest that he probably should have been a second, early third round pick. But if you want to, the Jets and Giants, they weren't amazing drafts, but I really like what the Giants and the Jets did. The Jets, they addressed the offensive line big time. You talk about Mekhi Becton, the potential that he has is through the roof. His floor may be really low. Hopefully, the Jets made the right decision there. The Giants, I know Chris didn't like the pick, but he's probably the safest offensive line prospect in this draft. And then they grab a big time safety in the second round from Alabama.
Dream.
Yeah.
Well, guys,
I feel too safe sometimes.
We're gonna pick up on the draft talk when Brandon comes on the show in a couple of days. But in turn, we will be bringing on our guest now, Pedro Gomez. Are we excited?
Yes, sir.
Oh my God! Honored.
This is big time.
Honored is the right.
This is big time,
word.
right?
This is
unbelievable.
Pedro joins the show. Like this.
What happened, Josh?
We shouldn't be pulling guests like this in right away, but
that's
we're doing it.
We're doing
legends of the game.
All right.
Pedro.
Oh man,
how are you?
It's working.
Look at that background.
Thanks for joining us.
I'm in my backyard.
That's awesome. That's a nice scenery right there.
Beautiful background. Meanwhile, I got my sweatshirt behind me. How are you doing, Pedro?
I'm well, boys. I'm really good, man. Yeah, how about you guys?
Oh, we're do. We're making do. It's a tough time for everybody. We're hoping that there's an end in sight at some point. The biggest thing is, we just extend our gratitude to all those people on the front line who are putting their work in for us. So that's what it comes down to.
Absolutely, I could not agree more. Can't agree more.
Yeah. The storyline that came out today, the unfortunate news with regards to Trey Mancini. So we just wanted to extend our sincere thoughts and prayers to him and his family during this time. One of the brighter young players in the league. So we're hoping he has a speedy recovery, and we hope everything works out well for
yeah.
Trey.
It's just it's also a reminder that, hey, there's real life problems going on, like other things go on in life, and that's just a reminder of things that people are going through.
Yes, of course. We wanted to ask you, Pedro, how is from your career as a reporter, how has it changed working in like a social distancing standpoint, whatever all the things that have been implemented? Yeah, we're curious.
It's been put on hold basically. ESPN is owned by Disney, and right now we're not allowed to do anything. Like, I can't even go out here. I live in Phoenix. I can't even go out and do a story on a major league player who lives in Phoenix. We've just put the clamps down on everything. We can only do things like what we're doing here, even though I'm in the same city. We have reporters living throughout the country. No one is allowed to do anything outside of their homes. I have a strong belief, we haven't been told this, but I have a strong belief that it's probably a liability issue.
Yes. Of course, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
But once baseball does pick up, there are varying options now as to how the league can pick up. And I know my co-host Justin wanted to speak to the fact of what were some of the plans that are in place. So if you want to go ahead and pick that up, Justin.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, Pedro. You're actually in Arizona, so this works perfectly. The rumor is, one of the plans is that they would, I guess, they would isolate themselves in a bubble and play in Arizona. Do you actually think that can actually work, and that's a real possibility?
It's of all the plans, it makes the most sense because travel would be eliminated. But having said that, the fact that it would be a bubble, so to speak, I think is the drawback, because you'd have all 30 clubs here, and if even one player or person that works with a club were to test positive, the whole thing would shut down. All 30 clubs would have to shut down at that point. So that's probably the biggest drawback to the all Arizona plan, even though logistically it makes perfect sense. Look, there's 10 minor league facilities here, or I should say major league spring training facilities, which are major league quality fields. There's also Chase Field, which would be an 11th field. There's Arizona State University, who plays at Phoenix Municipal Stadium, which used to be the home of the Oakland A's, the spring home of the Oakland A's. That's a 12th. And then there's Grand Canyon University, which is a Division I school, which has a major league quality facility. So there's 13 fields, all within a maximum of a 1 hour drive away, the farthest two. But yet, I think the fact that it's all in one bubble is the drawback to that one. The Texas Tampa plan has some merit to it, because you would be splitting up some, plus you won't have the excessive heat that we have here in Phoenix in the months of June, July, and August. I look, they're trying like hell to try to get formulate a plan to be able to hit the ground running if they decide to play, if the government says yes, go play. That's what they're doing right now. And I would say, let's not be naive. The biggest reason that this is being pushed is money.
Yeah.
If games are played, both players and owners will make money. If no games are played, nobody makes money. So that's again, let's not be naive. That's driving all of this.
And that's not even factoring in that these players have to leave their families too during this.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. I mean, look, Mike Trout, arguably, not even arguably, probably lock down the game's greatest player. You know, he and his wife are expecting a baby this summer. So if the games start, are you going to tell me Mike Trout's not going to be there for the birth of his first child?
Yeah.
Chris Bryant he and his wife just had their first child during spring training. All of a sudden, you know, 3 months in, he's going to pack up and leave and not be back till arguably November. These are obstacles. But I think these are obstacles that can be overcome. But again, the issue is, let's say the games start. Let's say it goes well for a week, and then all of a sudden, one person tests positive.
That's the issue, Pedro. Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that
that's something
that's neglected? That's something that's neglected. Then we're back to square one, right? You know,
the whole thing slams, the brake slam, everything stops.
And not even from the competition standpoint. I'd say from all your years covering baseball, it's quite eerie to think of just playing the duration of an entire season with no fans around, right? Isn't that something that seems, you know, I know that's going to be across all sports, but it's unique when you think about it, right?
No doubt about it. I mean, I've covered baseball games ever since the 80s. And I think back to being at Yankee Stadium in October, Fenway Park in October, Busch Stadium in October, Dodgers Stadium, and the energy that fans provide in that environment, in the playoff environment, in any environment, no matter what. It could be a regular season game. You know, there's just energy that is provided. And, you know, they're showing a lot of classic games now on MLB Network, on ESPN, on Fox. And it's amazing to watch and to just hear the thunder that comes from the crowd. And to think that these guys would be playing in a vacuum almost with zero crowd, it will absolutely be a determining factor on the energy that we see on the field, I believe.
Of course.
Yeah, definitely. So with that said, I guess this is a pretty easy question to answer. Do you see any real possibility of baseball being played within the next month or two?
I do think they're going to try. Yes. And again, I think the reason is, again, let's not be naive. I think it's money.
Definitely.
You know, if games are played, there's national television contracts that kick in, and owners can then make some money, even though they won't be making money off concession sales, off parking, off beer sales, hot dog sales, you know, all of that. But there will be some money to be made. And likewise, players will be making some money. Whatever percentage of their contract, it's still money. And, you know, when you think about 800 or so major league players, I know everybody thinks that they're all making, you know, 20 million a year, but that's not the reality. The reality is that of the 800 or so major leaguers, I would say a good 400 to 500 are making less than 2 million, which is a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. But in years past, when there have been work stoppages, the threat of that work stoppage was always known ahead of time. So the union could tell the players, hey, save your money. There might be a work stoppage. You've got to be able to have something. This was a lightning bolt. This just struck and boom, before even the first game could be played, you know, everything came to a halt. And I don't think a lot of regular fans understand that players do not get paid in spring training. They only get paid. Their first paycheck is the 15th of April after they've played 2 weeks of games. So not a single player has received a single penny from their salary.
Oh, wow. I thought I saw something about Betances getting his bonus already.
Bonuses are different.
Bonuses are different. Okay.
Yeah,
I got you.
but I'm talking about player salaries, which is the majority.
Okay.
You know, you're talking about a free agent who signed a free agent contract, and there was language written that on April 1st you get this much of the bonus. That still has to be paid because he signed his contract. But I'm talking about salaries. Nobody has received a penny from their salaries this year.
Wow. With that, I know.
That's new. Yeah.
I know. My other co-host Chris had something to talk about with a different country that's actually playing baseball.
There's two.
Yes. So
Taiwan and Korea.
Right. I
Yes,
forgot
yes,
about
yes.
Taiwan.
yeah, so I was going to speak to Korea, which announced earlier today actually that their season is going to be starting May 5th, a week from today, and it's going to be going through to November, and then they'll have full postseason, the full 144 game season. Do you think that's something that ESPN is planning to get in on, being that they want some level of competitive baseball?
No doubt. I mean, I don't think it's a secret that we're negotiating with the KBO, which is the Korean Baseball Organization, to try to televise games. And, there are American players playing in Korea. And actually, Matt Williams, the former third baseman of the Diamondbacks and the Giants and the Indians, he is managing as a rookie manager this year in the KBO. So there are definitely storylines that would interest American fans. There are some storylines to draw from. But aside from that, it's like you said, it's real competition. It's real baseball that would be able to be seen without knowing, oh, this is when Aaron Boone hits that home run in extra innings to beat the Red Sox, which, we all know is going to happen on the game that they're showing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't think that should be any problem for ESPN to get in on, because, and even the American public, because if the XFL can come in a matter of 3 weeks and everybody is already having a great time with that, everybody
Good
can attach themselves to some sort of team for whatever reason, whatever fad or favorite player that they have on whatever team. I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
I would love to see a different brand of baseball there.
Completely agree. I think it'll happen. I do believe it will happen.
That's good, because if you love baseball, you're watching. You're going to tune in.
Yeah.
Even to see what it's like. If you like it, you'll stop watching. If not, I know I'm going to tune in.
Yeah, I mean, the game is still, look, the pitcher's still 60 feet, 6 inches away. The bases are 90 feet. The bases are 90 feet, apart from each other. The game is still played exactly the same. And yeah, we may not know all the names or most of the names, but it's real baseball. And if you're a sports fan, I wouldn't even say a baseball fan. If you're a sports fan, it's at least a fix, so to speak, a quick fix to be able to watch something live.
Exactly.
And I know we also mentioned in the previous question about whether or not we see something by May 15th, June 15th, July 1st, something like that. With that being said, how big of an impact does this have on impending or early signed contracts? Maybe somebody like Mookie Betts, let's say, just to hone in on. Would it make how big of an impact does this have on his leverage, being that he's one of the top young stars, maybe due for a Bryce Harper type contract?
See, I don't think a Mookie Betts is going to be affected at all. He's got a resume. He's got, plenty on there that front offices know what level of player he is. It's the guys who emerge that aren't the top tier guys. Those are the guys that are going to be more affected than anybody else. Look, Mookie Betts is going to be a free agent at the end of this year, whether they play a game or not. That's already been decided. Same for Trevor Bauer. But you already have there's already enough there for front offices to be able to say this guy is worth paying X amount of dollars to. I don't care what the fact that he hasn't played in a year and a half. Let's say there are no games, just for the sake of argument. Let's say, the next games are played next spring. He doesn't have to worry. It's the other guys who are going to be either DFA'd at the end of this season, who are free agents at the end of the season, but don't have that same resume. Those are the guys that will be more affected than anybody else. And minor leaguers as well, by the way. And I have, I don't know if you guys know, I have a kid playing for the minors.
We'll bring that up later.
Yeah. I'm wearing my Salem Red Sox. I got my Salem Red Sox.
There you go.
Got to call them up. Stop playing around.
On that point, Pedro, with regards to Mookie Betts, though, what is the standpoint then from somebody like the Dodgers, though, who surrendered that kind of package to acquire Betts? Yeah. And if they come away empty-handed, I mean, there's no crying in baseball. I get that, but it just seems like a steal for the Red Sox to get, basically it's a because they don't get him, but neither does the team they traded to. They still get compensation from. That's what I struggle to.
It's unfortunate if Betts were to sign elsewhere other than with the Dodgers after this season, but there was no way to know. There was absolutely no way to know. But I honestly believe that the Dodgers made this deal thinking we have a way, way, way better than average chance of being able to keep him. Once he sees what LA is like, what Dodger Stadium is like, what wearing this uniform is like, playing in this city, we think he'll be. And the money. Let's not be naive again. And the money we can afford to pay him, because the Dodgers have a lot of expiring contracts in the next year to 2 years. Now they've got to pony up for guys like Walker Buehler, but Mookie Betts was in those plans because Clayton Kershaw's money comes off, Justin Turner's money comes off, and then they've got to also be able to keep Cody Bellinger, although they have more time to be able to still offer him arbitration and keep him until they have to give him a big, big money contract. But those, they're lined up. When they made this deal, they're already lined up to be able to say, all right, we can give Mookie $400 million or whatever in order to keep him. So I think they're still going to make a very attractive offer, regardless of whether there are games or not. But yeah, they do have there is a risk that he becomes a free agent without ever playing a single inning for the Dodgers.
Unheard of.
That's crazy to think of, but that possibility does exist.
You plan for the unexpected sometimes too, though. So.
Yeah.
What about if the guys who sign like the Coles and the Wheelers of the world? What happens? Does that count towards a year of their contract? How does that
Absolutely.
work?
They wouldn't get paid, but year one of the contract would go because they get Major League service time this year. So that's kind of the trade-off in the sense of it's not a trade-off, so to speak, but service time does matter towards your pension. Someone like Garrett Cole, it's not going to matter as much. But everybody who was on a Major League roster at the end of last season, if they were still on the Major League roster this year on the 40-man, they will get a full year's worth of service time, which does count towards your pension. And that starts to matter a lot with guys that aren't going to reach 10 years in the majors, or that are barely going to reach 10 years in the majors, because if you play 10 years, you get 100% pension, and the Major League pension is incredibly good. I want to say it's $280,000 a year, starting at age 65. Yeah, it's somewhere in that ballpark. I may not have the exact figure, but it's in that ballpark. But let's say you play 8 years in the majors. Well, it's 80% of 280, so it's still a very nice pension. But having the year's worth of service time is important to a lot of players.
Just want to add something to the service time. Do you see teams and players renegotiating since they're not getting, since if the season is canceled, they won't be getting that money? Do you see like renegotiations?
I think you'll see negotiations with players whose contracts are expiring. Sure.
What if Wheeler, like Zach Wheeler just signed? He's not going to get paid.
Oh no, not in that sense. No. He's signed for 5 years or whatever it was.
Yeah, no, but can you see like them renegotiating next year's salary since he's not getting any of it this year? So maybe like adding like a bonus.
I think this year just becomes a zero.
Okay.
Like if there are no games, it's this year's a zero. He gets the year of service time, but then next year, whatever his salary, I don't know what the figure is, 20 million or whatever. That's his salary next year. But in terms of opening up a contract that's already signed, no, that doesn't happen in baseball at all, ever.
Yeah.
Jake Lamb is another example. He's a free agent at the end of this year. He's been injured a lot. This was going to be a very, very big year for Jake Lamb, because if he was healthy, he's a very good role player, utility type guy, like a fourth, backup infielder who might be able to start for you for good stretches. It's going to hurt someone like that because he doesn't have anything to put in his body of work this season to show, hey, I'm healthy. So that a guy like that will be hurt. Again, a guy like Trevor Bauer, a guy like Mookie Betts, they're not going to be hurt by this. Their body of work speaks for itself.
And I would say Betances too, because he was looking to prove that he can stay healthy.
Yeah, and who was it that signed Didi signed a 1-year deal with the Phillies? Because he wanted to kind of reestablish his value.
It could hurt a lot of people if there's no baseball play.
Yeah,
but I know Joe wants to add something too.
Yeah, fire away.
Yeah. Well, we were going to transition a little bit now, Pedro, into the biogenesis question. So I'll let you pick that one
Yeah.
up, Justin. Yeah.
Oh, the biogenesis one. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, because everyone knows that with the Astros, but what do you think had a more adverse effect in the history of the game? Biogenesis and the Mitchell report, or the sign stealing?
I personally believe the sign stealing is a worse offense. And I'm very, very anti PED, believe me,
Yeah,
incredibly anti PED. Um, but I think that when you have a collaborative effort of every player on the roster being in on it and them kind of just saying, yeah, let's go with it, that to me is worse than one individual saying, I'm going to take steroids and see what I can do for myself. That's not a team decision. This was a club wide decision, organizational wide decision. And that to me puts it on a far worse. Look, they're both heinous acts within the game, but I think if you had to rank, I would put the sign stealing as a worse offense than PEDs.
and you know what's coming too, because if you're on steroids, you still have to. You don't know what's coming,
Yeah,
and
I
you
mean,
still have to
you
make
still have to
contact.
execute. Yeah, you have to execute
Exactly,
no matter
but
what on both. But
it's
you know,
still cheating.
look, either regardless, because you know, there's hitters who are career 295 hitters who during the steroid era were hitting 370 at age 38.
Yeah,
So obviously, steroids did something to improve
definitely.
your statistics, your abilities. Um, but like I said, the fact that this was a collaborative 25-man decision, to me that puts it at a worse, that's a worse offense for me, and that's
If I
me.
could, I mean, I agree 100% too. But adding to that, do you think this hurts Beltran's chances of ever going back into MLB? A
uh
little controversial, but I just wanted
yeah,
to
i
get
think
your
i
opinion.
think the Mets was a perfect place for him because he had played there. I think it's going to be really difficult for another organization to give Carlos an opportunity to manage. I think it's going to be very difficult. I could see him possibly being a coach, but I don't even know if he's willing to accept that role. But I think it's going to be very difficult for another organization to give Carlos a chance at managing.
Yeah, sticking with biogenesis, I know Chris had something to add to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I wanted to kind of pan towards some things that you covered personally over the years, biogenesis being one, and then also Barry Bonds' race to the home run record. Being that those
Apologies.
were kind of these pillars of baseball history, um, can you speak to how difficult or easy or your process in staying impartial despite the amount of pressure from the outside and hate on one side or the other towards these people involved?
It goes along with being a reporter. It doesn't matter. I mean, there are people covering the White House today that are facing similar pressures. You have to, when you get into this business, you are supposed to make a vow to remain impartial, to remain unbiased. And I know that's very difficult for a lot of people to understand. And even though I have my personal feelings about Barry Bonds while I was reporting on him, I never ever let those come to the surface. I never wanted to be the story. I just happened to be the guy that was covering him day in, day out. And look, I'm very aware that's going to be in my obituary. The guy who covered Barry Bonds 2.5 years. I know that's going to be in my obituary, but I'd like to think that I did it on a fair and impartial manner. I know that there are plenty of Giants fans who don't believe that because I was reporting a lot of negative things against Bonds, but I wasn't inventing those things. Those were things that
Exactly.
occurred. And as a reporter, my job is to report what is discovered. And that's what I was doing. So
Yeah.
while Giants fans may not agree with it, I know I can look at myself in the mirror and know that I was impartial.
Exactly. The truth hurts sometimes, and I think
Oh
that's what we all
yeah.
respect most about
Oh yeah.
about your writing and about all that you've done for the game.
Yeah.
And it's not easy, and I know that you've defended yourself on a stance like Mike Piazza, so we can appreciate and remain. So, with that being said, have you spoken much with other Hall of Fame voters as to how they rationalize how they vote for suspected or confirmed PED users?
I believe this year there were like 402 or 403 Hall of Fame voters. So you have to reach 75%, and everybody is allowed to make their own decision. It's kind of like when all four of us, go to vote in a mayoral election or U.S. Senate or presidential election. You get to make your own decision, and there are people that say, hey, you know what, this guy was the best player with or without, and I'm voting for him for that reason. And then I'm on the record that I don't vote for PED guys, and that's my decision. That's my personal decision. I've earned the vote of the Hall of Fame. I've been voting for 20 years, and that's my decision. It's my personal decision of how I view the Hall of Fame. And there are others that view it as though, you know what, I don't care. I don't care what they did. Everyone was using. It doesn't matter to me, and that's their decision. And look, we're very good friends, even though we completely disagree on this one topic. It doesn't matter. It's not going to change the way I view that person, that voter, and I don't believe it's changed the way they view me as a voter. It's just that we happen to disagree on that particular aspect.
Yeah, and
Like you
that's
said, everyone has
totally
their own
fair.
opinions.
I'm sorry.
Yep. Well, I wanted to turn things over about a little bit, Pedro, about another story you covered to some extent when you a few years back. Put it in perspective. When the NBA lost Kobe Bryant, you saw the ripple effect across the league, right?
Yep.
And how much it impacted everybody. And although I know Jose Fernandez wasn't, as established and didn't have that kind of longevity to his career that somebody like a Kobe Bryant had, you saw that a star like Fernandez was he was about to take off, right, and become one of the prominent and elite pitchers, if not the most elite pitcher in this game. Can you speak to what we lost in Jose Fernandez as baseball fans, but also in the baseball community, especially in that large Cuban community in Miami?
Yeah. And I grew up in Miami, and I'm Cuban. So I know that community very, very well. And it's a good comparison to bring up Kobe. The difference being Kobe played 20 years. Jose Fernandez got to play 3 years, I think it was 2 or 3 years. And Kobe's grip on LA was really, Kobe had a grip nationally, but Kobe's grip on LA was not that dissimilar to the grip that Jose Fernandez had on Miami. And the reason being, bilingual, Cuban. There were so many people there that could relate to him and love the fact that it was basically he's one of ours. He's a Cuban, and the population of Miami is well over 50% Cuban, and it's a large metropolitan area. So it was it hit very hard. I covered that whole story. I flew to Miami, and that was a difficult story. I knew Jose personally. I really liked him a lot, and I think he was in line to easily become a Hall of Famer. He had Hall of Fame. He had Hall of Fame talent. There's no doubt he had Hall of Fame talent. He always reminded me a lot of Tom Seaver. He was taller than Tom Seaver, but he reminded me of Tom Seaver in the sense that I'm going right at you. Here's my best stuff. You get me, fine, but I'm going to go at you. And more often than not, Jose was the winner in those battles, those individual battles.
And that's not
and
a very
his
unpopular
personality,
opinion.
though, his personality was such that, look, Mike Trout is the best player in the game, but he doesn't have the personality to want that label, so to speak. And Mike is a great, great person, but it's just not his personality to want to be that guy. Jose wanted to be that guy.
He's taken some slack for that, because I know
Yeah. And it's unfortunate because not everyone
he lobbied for him to be that marketable player.
Yeah, not everyone's wired the same, but I can tell you, knowing Jose as well as I did, knowing his mother and his family, I can tell you he was wired that way. he would have been. He was set to become the face of all of baseball. The fact that he spoke the two primary languages in the game would have elevated him to a level higher than people like our parents would say Mickey Mantle in the 60s, except there's so much more exposure now, and Jose was wired to take on that responsibility, and he would have just embraced it, and he would have been a Hall of Famer.
And I think that he was like the first one to really show the young guys, like, hey, we can have fun while playing this game. I think because everyone wants to talk about Harper and the bat flips, but I think at least for a pitcher, because growing up, I was a pitcher and I loved it. Like, you can show that you can have fun.
He was the first bat flipper without being a bat flipper.
Exactly.
I look at that Marlins team, Pedro, and I see that, like, I actually think the passing of Jose Fernandez, I know it really wasn't prominently highlighted when they started breaking that down by trading the Ozunas and the Yelich and the Stans of the world, and ultimately, and even Real Muto. But that does go with Fernandez's passing. That kind of went hand in hand with them breaking it down. Would you say? Because I look at that team.
It killed the franchise. It absolutely
they were on the
precipice
of defeating it.
That franchise was moving in the right direction. They were ready. They had the horse in the number one slot, the guy who could take a game one in a playoff and win. And that is really difficult to come by. And it absolutely destroyed every advancement that franchise had made to that point. It didn't just set it back; it killed it.
I think that was a critical point. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, and I guess going towards a more lighthearted note, just two things.
Jose had a great sense of humor, by the way. Jose had a great sense of humor.
I think that shows.
He would be here right now going, "Oh, so what? Talk about my death. Who cares?"
We're big Mets fan here. He was my favorite pitcher. I was pretty devastated when I got the news.
If you had to pick between which was more difficult, just prepping your questions for the Game 7 and the post-game interviewing the World Series MVP, or trying to sit down while your son pitches the bottom half of the ninth, which is more difficult?
All I heard was trying to sit down while my son. I can't hear the rest. Sorry. Do it again.
While your son was pitching the bottom half of the ninth inning of any game.
The more difficult, without question, is watching my son, even if it's the first inning. I'm a pacer. I'm a pacer. I get out my pace. I shield my eyes sometimes. It's beyond belief that he's even reached the level he's reached. But it's nerve-wracking beyond belief. And asking guys questions after a Game 7 is nothing compared to watching my son on the hill. Nothing.
I guess piggybacking also that he was going to have. I'm sorry, Chris. You can go. That was my bad.
Just going off of your stoicism, I know that there's been a couple interviews I got to see where some guys were trying to have some fun with you. How do you keep your cool when Brian Wilson is saying that he has garden gnomes in his beard and David Price is giving you a hard time because he thinks you're a doubter and this and that? How do you keep that mic straight and not just try to not break down completely? Because I would be dying.
Because those guys are having fun in that situation right there. And you gotta, you know what? It's sports. And I think, if anything, this whole pandemic is, I hope, going to kind of hit a reset button for a lot of our country to say, let's have fun with sports. Let's have fun again. It doesn't have to be, it's not do or die. No one's dying because you've lost a game, a playoff game. You didn't win the division title, whatever. No one is going to die. So I'm hoping that this might hit a reset button across all avenues and remind everyone, let's just have fun again.
I think we started last year too with the Mets. with Pete Alonso, because Pete Alonso's just
Yeah.
having fun. He's like a big teddy bear
Yeah.
playing in the biggest city in the world, just
Yeah.
having
Agreed.
fun.
Agreed. It should be fun. You know what? They never say work ball. They always say play ball.
Yeah, it's a kid's game, and they're playing. It's a kid's game, and they're playing
Yeah.
professionally, getting
Yeah.
paid.
I mean, look, there's pressures, no doubt. It's
Yeah.
a do league. It's not a try hard league. It's a do league at that level.
Yeah.
You know, anytime you're playing D1 baseball, anywhere in the minors, anywhere in the majors, it's not a try hard league. It's a do
Yeah.
league, but it still can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think the best teams are the ones that have fun, and the
Yeah.
coaches and the managers emphasize that have fun out there. Because if you're going to be out
Completely
there
agree.
tight, you're going to make an error here or there. You're going to
Yep.
throw the ball 3 feet off the plate, so you have to stay loose and have fun.
Completely agree. Look, the team that beat your Mets in the World Series, the Royals, had fun. They were
Absolutely.
a fun
That
team.
that burned a little, Pedro. That
I'm
Oh
burned a
yeah,
little.
sorry.
it's open wound.
But they were a fun team, and you know what? Hey, the Mets got to the World Series. Come on, man.
I think the Mets were a fun team that year too, with Terry
Yeah.
Fernandez.
Oh, I think anybody that reaches
He made
the
a
end
drastic
usually
change
has
too.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess the last fun point that we'll make is, could you go over the Josh Beckett rally beard story with us one more time? Because that's probably that is the funniest thing I've ever seen a reporter speak about in terms of just being, it's just a guy in his element. Could you just speak to that?
Yes, indeed. So
in
you've done your homework.
that
All right.
yes.
So yeah, the 03 game 6, it's the Steve Bartman game at Wrigley Field, 03 NLCS. And Beckett had just thrown a 9-inning complete game in game 5. So there was absolutely no way he was going to pitch game 6, which was only, 2 days, 48 hours later, after he'd just thrown 123 pitches or whatever. So I'm working for ESPN. I had just started a few months earlier, and we're at the Cubs side, right behind the dugout, because when the game ends, us and Fox are right on the field when the game ends to interview. So they got us right behind the Cubs dugout during the 8th inning, and all of a sudden the whole Bartman and the inning unravels. Alex Gonzalez makes the error at short. And so one of the MLB that grabs us by the arm and says, okay, let's go. And we're at Wrigley Field, which doesn't have an underground tunnel like all the new stadiums. So we're through the concourse, racing from the first base side to the third base side, which is the visitors side. And we are now behind the Marlins dugout during the 8th inning, and the Marlins just continue to score runs. And every time they score a run, Beckett runs to the club and runs into the dugout, and he's got those green Gatorade cups that are 18 ounces, whatever. And at one point, he just looks at me and he just goes, "Rally beer, Pedro," and he goes and he chugs it in the dugout during the game after every Marlins run. And
Oh my God.
so he raced back and forth like 4 times that inning that I saw. Because I think the Marlins scored 6 runs that inning, but we weren't there at the beginning of the inning because we were on the other side.
Oh my gosh, that's an all-time, the most undertold stories in baseball.
Yeah, that was crazy. And of course, the Marlins won Game 7 and won the World Series, beating the Yankees. Who, if you're a Met fan, you probably didn't mind.
I did not.
Yeah.
I was a big Cabrera fan anyway.
And in closing, Pedro, we just all wanted to thank you so much for taking time out of your day. We know
man,
you're an in-demand guy, and we're just a small group of guys trying to make something happen. And we would definitely want to close by saying we want to collectively make a donation to the V Foundation in memory of Ricky.
Thank you.
And we just want to pay it forward, and we really appreciate everything that you do as a reporter, as a human being, as a baseball reference. Thank you so much for coming on.
That is very, very, very kind of you guys. I appreciate that more than you can imagine. Thank you. And I know you guys have Houston Street coming on. I covered him for a lot of years. I got to know him, and boy, you talk about a quality individual. That is a high quality individual. Tell him I said hi. And you guys know his dad was a quarterback on the national championship at the University of Texas.
Undefeated.
Yep,
Well,
James Street. So Darryl Royal, the head coach of that Texas team, had a great line. You know, the preseason polls always come out, and if you're number one, chances are the coaches are like, "Oh no, we're not number one. It's Auburn. It's Michigan. It's nobody wants to be number one at the beginning of the season. They view it like that's the worst thing in the world." Darryl Royal's team, Texas, with James Street, was the preseason number one. And they go and talk to Royal about being preseason number one. He goes, "Well, if they're keeping a poll, you'd rather be at the top than anywhere else." I love that. I love
That's
that.
right. That's 100%
And he's
right.
right. And he's right.
Oh man. That's
So
really
say hi to
exciting.
Houston for me.
We will, absolutely. And hopefully we can have you come on
Again,
soon
thank
too.
you so
Again.
much for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. You set us up for our next episode. Houston Street will be appearing, so thank you for that. Please continue to stay safe, you and your family. Okay.
All right,
and
man.
thank you for coming on, and maybe we can have you again. Okay.
Absolutely, my absolute pleasure. Good luck, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Keep in touch.
Thank
All right,
you.
take care.